As I ring this bowl, let's relax into this common time and space. We'll share the silence and realize that we need to be together. We yearn for connection, the familiar faces of friends, the sound of shared voices. Let's find an inner peace away from the hubbub of our daily lives for a while this morning. Thank you, Michael. Also like to call attention to the flowers. We regularly enjoy those flowers and we thank Vita for them. Regularly, we thank Vita for them. Good morning and welcome to Unitarian Universalists of the Chester River. A special welcome to our friends, members, and visitors, both here in the sanctuary and those joining us on Zoom. Our mission, as noted on the cover of your order of service, is to inspire, inform, and support all who seek spiritual and personal growth and a more equal and just community. I am Jan Sprinkle, worship leader today, joining Reverend David Hunter for our service today. Reverend Dave has graced our pulpit before, most recently in 2017. So he's a fresh voice for many of us, including me. He's a retired UU minister, a graduate of Princeton University, the Harvard Law School, and Wesley Theological Seminary. He was, in his first career, a civil rights lawyer, 25 years with the Department of Justice in the voting section of the Civil Rights Division. Seems an appropriate background for today's current events. Dave was ordained in 2003, has served congregations, usually with his wife, Carrie Mueller, in Maryland, New Jersey, Arkansas, and Pennsylvania. Welcome back to our pulpit, and we thank you for including us in your active schedule this morning. I have a few announcements. I've already mentioned Vita and the flowers. We're not going to ever pass you by again. There will be a training session after the service this morning, and I've got a much more detailed announcement, but I'm going to save that until the end of the service so that it'll be fresh in our minds and we'll know what to do. Another item, Joy Kim will be selling tickets for the soup supper coming up on December 13th. There you go. December 13th, the soup supper, and it's convenient to come to soup supper and then dash over to the Presbyterian Church for the Chester River Chorale Christmas service. I look to see all of you there. By the way, my note here on the soup supper is that we could use more desserts and breads. Now, I shared that Michael is a master baker, so.
Can you hold on just one moment?
Is this dying?
The battery's dying on it.
The story of my life, my batteries are dying. And one final announcement that is a little cryptic. Catherine, Reverend Catherine, sent this to Darlene, asking that we would notify everyone that today is, November 20th is Transgender Day of Remembrance. And included is this fancy little code that is posted out in the lobby, and that's where you can get lots more information on Transgender Day. I think that is all of our announcements. And now, if Reverend Dave will come up and lead in the words for the lighting of the chalice, I will actually light the chalice.
We will now light our chalice with these words in your order of service. We light this chalice as a symbol of the light within all creation. We light this chalice for truth. May the search for truth be with us always. We light this chalice for love. May the love for others be strong in our hearts.
For some opening words, I came across, is that where we are? Oh, I'm sorry, I leaped ahead, and I don't want to skip the hymn. Hymn number 114. Sorry. If you reach far enough back in your memory banks, you'll probably know that tune. It's the words, always the words. Speaking of words, I have some opening words. They were originally, I think, written as a responsive reading, but I think they work just as a reading. There is only one reason for joining a Unitarian Universalist church, and that is to support it. We want to support it because it stands against superstition and fear. We want to support it because the church points to what is noblest and best in human life. We want to support it because it is open to women and men of whatever religion, race, creed, color, place of origin, political affiliation, gender identity, or sexual orientation. We want to support it because it is a place where children can learn that religion is for joy, comfort, gratitude, and love. We want to support it because it is a place where walls between people are torn down rather than built up. We want to support it because it is more concerned with human beings than with dogmas. We want to support it because it searches for the holy rather than dwelling upon the depraved. We want to support it because it calls no one a sinner, yet knows how deep is the struggle in each person's breast and how great is the hunger for what is good. We want to support it because it calls us to worship what is truly worthy of our sacrifice. There is only one reason for joining a Unitarian Universalist church: to support it. Now let's move to acknowledgments of the heart. This is our time to share both joys and concerns with the congregation. For those here in the sanctuary, come up to the mic to speak. I'll drop a stone in the water. And I'll drop the first stone to acknowledge the many challenges and suffering around the globe, as well as the many divisions here at home. And you might notice that I'm using the stones in the water just for the variety from candle lighting. So, come ahead.
I want to let everybody know who was not there that when we have a potluck at this church, it is not macaroni and cheese night. I attended my second one this past Friday night at Vita and Bob's house, and the food was heavenly, the house was gorgeous, and the company was very comforting and wonderful to be with. The food, I say again, is fabulous.
I can second that.
Can't walk with the can, can't walk without.
Oh, you're doing fine.
I called Cindy and Susan Britton the other day when I heard the business about the transgender to tell them that we were thinking about them and to wish them well. She said they're doing okay. But it's very scary for them. So I wish we could all send our best and our love to them while they're going through a hard time.
Got it.
This
past Monday evening, the Crestview Homeowners Association had their annual meeting here, and UUCR is a member of the Homeowners Association because they own a lot and property here. I've been the secretary for 9 years, and I was up for re-election. And we went into the board meeting. We had asked at least a half a dozen people to either volunteer to serve as secretary and president. Nobody said yes. So we went into that meeting, and I have to say I was very pleased that we have 2 young couples that moved into the neighborhood. And one of them, the woman, said she'll be secretary. She happens to be a professor at Washington College in the Office of Environmental Studies. Then we got to president. Dead silence. Finally, Jennifer Vaccaro, who is also moving into the neighborhood, she's a Shore Rivers employee, she said, I'll be president. And I was like, oh, joy, joy.
Yeah, I was going to say, that might be worth 2 stones. Well, for these joys and concerns shared, and for all those that remain held in your hearts, let's put one more stone in, and let us now have a moment of silence. Blessed be.
Let us join in the spirit of meditation or prayer. Spirit of love, spirit of faith, spirit of hope, be with all of us as we go through life, never knowing what lies ahead. Bind our hearts together in this sacred community of humanity. Bind our hearts together in this sacred hour. Bind our hearts in love and faith and hope. Give us the strength to continue when we feel like giving up. Give us the vision to continue when we do not see the way. Give us the voice to continue when sadness shuts us up. May we find a week from Thursday things to be thankful for. We live in difficult times. May we humans, have the strength, the will, the knowledge, and the good judgment to persevere, to do the right thing, to have faith, so that our descendants a century from now will be inspired to say in complete sincerity, thank you. Let us pause briefly in silence for personal reflection, to listen for a voice from we know not where, to set aside the concerns of the present. Amen.
We'll now pass the baskets for your support for the many good works that this church partakes of.
A few years ago, well, actually it's been more than 40 already, a young man, let's call him Dave. A young man married an old friend, a woman with 2 young children. An objective observer probably would have said that it wouldn't be easy making a family out of 2 quite different, even inconsistent lifestyles. Dave had his apartment in the city. He liked to run, to ride his bicycle, to eat out in the variety of restaurants his neighborhood provided. He attended concerts and plays frequently. He worked late when he needed to. He didn't hesitate to enlist in causes that involved frequent evening meetings. His bride, let's call her Carrie, was a hard-working single parent, beginning a new career, working on the railroad. What a job for a Greek major. Working full-time while raising 2 elementary school-aged children. Never enough time to get everything done. Never enough money to maintain adequately the large but needy older house she inherited from her marriage. How would this family come together? How would these 2 adults and these 2 children form a family? Here's what they did. They went to church together. That's not the whole answer, of course, but it was an important part of the solution. They went to church together, and not just any church. They joined their local Unitarian Universalist congregation, where each of them would be valued, where each would have a role. Young David, a 2nd grader, received a part in the Christmas play, small one, and soon the whole family knew that play from memory.
There, small one. Here's a nice bed of hay for you.
To sleep on. Dave found his place in the choir. He wasn't yet sure what a Unitarian Universalist was, let alone whether he wanted to be one or could be one. But as long as he could carry a tune, he was welcome in the choir. The new family started praying together too, before meals. Good non-petitionary Unitarian Universalist prayers directed to no one in particular, or more accurately, directed more inward than outward. This morning, I'd like to share with you a few stories about someone we'll call Dave. These stories are all rooted in fact, in history, but some imagination, some fantasy has been included as well. I'll try to sort out fact from fiction before I'm done. But let's go back much earlier in time. A young boy, Dave, maybe he's 8 or 9 years old. He's reading a Bible. What had inspired him to do that? His family is a good church-going Presbyterian family. Dave's father is the kind of man who would always end up on the finance committee or the fundraising committee. His Monday to Friday work in the financial world and at church, he feels more comfortable doing financial planning than probing his own theological views of, or, heaven forbid, probing his feelings. But Dave has learned that the Bible is important, a special book, not to be compared with Dr. Dolittle or Winnie the Pooh. So he decides to read it. A somewhat compulsive child, he starts with Genesis, and his plan is just to read the whole thing, start at the beginning and read to the end. I don't know how far he got, but I've yet to meet a 9-year-old who was a match for Leviticus, or an adult either, for that matter. Dave's parents are impressed and perhaps a little alarmed by his Bible project. We need a church, his mother says to his father. We need a church where our children's natural religious curiosity is nurtured, where the lessons are age appropriate, where the children learn from a variety of sources. Parents do some searching and make some inquiries. In the following September, Dave and his older brother are enrolled in the religious education program at Detroit's Universalist Church. No, made that last part up. The parents are happy with their Presbyterian church, and the idea of searching for something different never occurs to them. Here's another story. This time, Dave is a young man. He has graduated from law school and he's moved to Washington, D.C., where he's employed as a lawyer for the United States Commission on Civil Rights. He's working with others on a study of the effectiveness of the recently passed Voting Rights Act. Has the Voting Rights Act enabled Black citizens of the southern states to become full participants in the electoral process? But there's a war going on, the Vietnam War. Dave, a healthy young man, is subject to the draft. His student deferment ended the day he graduated from law school. He has given a lot of thought to the war, and he has decided that he cannot participate in it. He believes that for the United States to wage war against North Vietnam and the Viet Cong is both illegal under international law and horribly immoral. Dave needs a place where he can talk about all this. His ideas need to be tested. He needs help in sorting out his motivations. He needs help in imagining and exploring his options and his future. He needs to be with others who are going through the same ordeal. In short, he needs to be part of a religious community. But Dave has left the church. He has no use for the God he learned about as a 9-year-old. He doesn't believe that Jesus was brought back to life again after his horrible execution, or that continued existence in a different realm awaits those whose life on earth is ended. Dave spends a lot of his time at meetings to organize against the war, against the draft, meetings to organize in favor of political candidates, give hope of bringing the conflict to a close. One day he goes to a meeting at a church on 16th Street Northwest. As he is leaving the meeting, leaving the church, a pamphlet in the pamphlet rack catches his attention. Unitarian Universalist views on war and the draft. As he picks up the pamphlet, he sees another. Are atheists welcome at a Unitarian Universalist congregation? And before he has time to look at that one, he spots a third one. On a quest for meaning, reflections of a Unitarian Universalist young adult. Dave decides to return on Sunday morning and check this place out. No, I made this last part up. No discovery of Unitarian Universalism at that time. Here's another story. The setting is the same. Dave has graduated from law school. He's working for the Civil Rights Commission and devoting his evenings and weekends to anti-war organizing. He is at home in his apartment. The phone rings. It's Dave's mother calling long distance. She inquires about how things are going and shares some random family events, and then gives Dave the news that his father has been diagnosed with lung cancer. For the next many months, Dave flies back to Detroit several times, and Dave's parents are able to come out to Washington for a visit. There's a lot Dave and his father need to talk about. They need to relive the good times they had together. They needed to talk about their hopes for the future. But they are unable to have the conversations they need. There are a lot of feelings and emotions that Dave needs to recognize and express. Sadness, love, anger, betrayal, guilt. He doesn't know how. Then one Sunday morning, Dave is out exploring. He's walking by a church on 16th Street Northwest. The doors are opened. And he hears a familiar hymn. On impulse, he walks in and stands in back. The words easily come back to him. Holy, 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 merciful and mighty, God in three persons, blessed Trinity. Holy, 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 merciful and mighty, God in three persons, blessed Trinity. As the congregation starts to sing, someone thrusts a hymn book in his hands, open to the right page. Through his tears, he can't read the words, but what he hears around him isn't what he remembers from his childhood. Here's what he hears. Bring, O past, your honor. Bring, O time, your harvest. Golden sheaves of hallowed lives and minds by truth made free. By the last verse, he wiped his eyes and is able to sing. Long o'er life's swift river, preach the eternal gospel, faith, hope, and love for all humanity. Leaving the house of worship, he feels born again, though of course he doesn't recognize that feeling. Returns to his apartment, phones his father, and tells him that he loves him. Alas, all that about the church is out of my imagination. It's what I wish had happened. The church on 16th Street Northwest in Washington, D.C. is All Souls Church Unitarian Universalist. Is there anyone here who has worshiped at All Souls? Oh, a whole lot of us. Good. A few years ago, a quote in an interview in the New York Times Sunday magazine caught my attention. The quoted speaker was the great tennis player Martina Navratilova. Here's what she said. I'm not any religion, but I believe in the existence of a higher power. I believe there's one big God out there. I don't go to church. It's how you behave in life, not whether you go to church and pray, that makes you a worthy human being. I can appreciate her attitude, but my goodness, she leaves out a lot. She has a narrow view of religion and of the reasons for being part of a religious community. Perhaps if Robert Randall had been the interviewer, he would have done some further probing. Robert L. Randall is the author of What People Expect from Church. Randall is both a PhD clinical psychologist and an ordained minister. What brings us to a religious community, or what brings us back to one? Randall lists 4 needs, 4 concerns that put people in search of a religious community. First, people come to a faith community because they yearn to feel understood. They hope that someone will understand in a non-judgmental way what is going on in their life. That someone will take the time to listen to them, to really listen, and will accept them as they are. Second, people come to a religious community because they yearn to understand what is going on in their own lives and in the lives of others, to understand the big picture, the meaning of life, the meaning of death. They yearn to understand, and they are looking for pastors and parishioners who can help them in their quest. Third, people join a congregation because they long to belong. They want to feel accepted. They want to be part of a community of love and support, a community that will be there for them when they are at their best, but also when they are at their worst. A community that will be there for them now, but also in the future, when their days on earth are running out. Fourth, people come to church because they want to have hope. Life is not treating them well, and they need a reason, a motivation for keeping going. But not just hope for themselves and their families. They see the mess the world is in, and they want to have hope for a better tomorrow. They want to have hope indeed that there will be a tomorrow. 4 needs we have, according to Randall: to feel understood, to understand, to belong, and to have hope. Now, I don't know if Randall has got this exactly right, and I'm sure we could brainstorm additional reasons, but it's not a bad list that he's come up with. To feel understood, to understand, to belong, and to have hope. We could, I imagine, go through the 4 stories about Dave and find each of these needs. But wouldn't that be boring? Instead, I want to offer some reflections on the stories of Dave and the needs described by Randall. We all have our stories comparable to the stories of Dave. We all have our needs, like the needs described by Randall. When I say we, I mean we in this room, and also the greater we human beings. We have our stories, we have our needs. We all have the experience of growing up, of learning to make sense of a complicated world, filled with large, inscrutable people and unpredictable events. We have stories and needs relating to growing up. And of course, we're all still growing up. We all face moral challenges and dilemmas. Being part of a nation at war is an obvious example. When I was a young adult, the war was in Vietnam. We all face losses, the end of the innocence of childhood, the end of the freedom of unencumbered young adulthood, the loss of parents, sometimes the loss of marriages and other relationships, the loss of jobs. And sadly, sometimes, contrary to how we feel the world should work, we experience the loss of a child. In our sorrows, we need those who would listen, who would provide the needed hugs, the welcome casserole or pie, the words of solidarity, and compassion. In most of our lives, we can find joys as well as sorrows. And in our joys, we need those who would rejoice with us, help us celebrate, those who would look with approval and admiration at pictures of our children and grandchildren. And occasionally, we need Eeyore to bring us back to earth, to put our joy in perspective. We all have our stories, we all have our needs. People come together to form congregations to be able to provide care and comfort for one another. People sustain congregations as communities where people can listen to one another, listen with sympathy and without judgment. People search for congregations where they will be valued just as they are, with their baggage of needs and stories. Let me assure you that a Unitarian Universalist congregation can listen and respond to the stories and meet the needs that we all have as well as any other. The needs that Randall describes do not include a need for a particular kind of theology or for any theology at all. He does not describe a concern for salvation, if salvation is understood as rescue from an unfortunate post-death destination. Rather, Randall's needs are ones of how we live, how we relate to others, how we relate to the world. No religion, no religious community has a monopoly on responding to people in need. Certainly, we Unitarian Universalists do not claim that we are the only ones who can take in those who are hurting or wondering or wandering. But I would insist that we can do it as well as anyone. What we need, what we can provide, is the sympathetic ear, the understanding heart, the courageous voice. We don't have a monopoly on these, but I think we can provide them as well as anyone. And it is my belief, from my not unbiased point of view, that we are more welcoming than most. While I believe that for many people, perhaps most people, a variety of religious options are possible, that is not the case for everyone. For some people, a Unitarian Universalist congregation is the only one that can hear their stories and satisfy their needs. I can imagine such a person asking, what do we need? Do we need a God to answer our questions? Do we need a God to guide our lives? Do we need a God to guarantee justice? No, they respond, I don't think so. They would ask, do we need a creed with propositions that we can't understand? A creed that we have to strain to reinterpret to make sense of it in the 21st century? A creed that we accept as being for Sunday only, not relevant the rest of the week? Again, they would respond, no, I don't think so. Do we need, they would ask, moral rules based on the ancient principle, because I said so, rather than on human experience and reason? No, I don't think so. The person with such questions and such responses, I'm one of them, should feel at home in a Unitarian Universalist congregation. But honesty and fairness requires me to add a footnote here. There are many liberal Protestant congregations who would welcome such religious skeptics and seekers, and synagogues and other non-Christian congregations as well. But for many people, a Unitarian Universalist congregation is clearly the best fit. This religious community, this congregation, you represent Unitarian Universalism. You are Unitarian Universalism in the Chestertown area. If someone in these parts has a need to understand and be understood, a need to belong, a need for hope, they are looking for a liberal, non-dogmatic religious community. If they are looking for a Unitarian Universalist congregation, then they are looking for this congregation. May your doors be open for them. In summary, then, we all have our stories and our needs. Churches and religious communities in general provide a safe place, at least they should, a safe place for telling our stories and sharing our needs. Unitarian Universalist congregations, like other religious communities, give people the opportunity to tell their stories, to share their needs. For some of us, a Unitarian Universalist religious community is the only one in which we would feel at home. This congregation is the presence of Unitarian Universalism for this area. This should be a source of pride, but it should also give you a sense of responsibility. Let me return to the stories about Dave that I began with. As you suspected, I'm Dave. The first story about the new family, it's all true. That's how our family began in 1980. Little David, who was in second grade then, is now in his 50s, married to his college sweetheart and the proud father of 2 daughters now in college. The other 3 stories, as I indicated, are true too, up to a point. As I told them, they all ended with the discovery of Unitarian Universalism, a life-transforming discovery of Unitarian Universalism. That part is my wishful recreation of how the stories came out. My parents never abandoned the Presbyterian Church. I faced the Vietnam War and the draft and the illness and death of my father without the religious community that I realize now I so badly needed then. And I did not find Unitarian Universalism till the formation of our family 44 years ago. It is my hope, indeed my prayer, that Unitarian Universalism will be available for all of you and your children and grandchildren, and for all those who need it, both now and in the future, both here and everywhere. Amen.
Let's join in that hymn that we got a taste of, number 290 in the gray hymnal. And then we'll have the chance to ask questions of all of the Daves. Just curious, how many of you could sing the old original words? That's what I thought. Well, now is your opportunity to quiz the various Daves on his memories, or to share with us your own memories. I might have a question for the Dave who lost his draft deferment when he graduated from college. Did the draft ever catch up with you?
Yes, they did. It's a long story, but I'll make it short. I refused induction.
There you go.
I did not go to prison.
I, on the other hand, in the same situation, did enlist. I went to the Air Force and they defined my entire life for me. And I never saw combat.
My question is a little off message, but I'm interested in your history with the Civil Rights Division and in what you are hearing from people you may know or be hearing about who are working there right now.
Well, I left them in 2000, so I don't have much contact anymore. There's still some people who are there when I was. I was in the voting section for the whole time there, 25 years, enforcing the Voting Rights Act in 1965 with amendments, the National Voter Registration Act, the Uniform and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act, and so on. And I think we made progress. And several years ago, the Supreme Court said that Section 5, that's the pre-clearance requirement that required southern states and cities to get, well, my approval for a while, before enacting any change affecting voting to make sure they weren't discriminatory. The Supreme Court said that's been so effective, we don't need it anymore. They were wrong. The next day, North Carolina and Texas brought back things that had been struck down, and Section 5 could be useful, the pre-clearance requirement.
David, thank you for those wonderful stories in history. Holy, Holy, Holy was hymn number 1 in the Southern Baptist hymnal, and was my favorite back then. So it does bring back, that melody brings back memories. I think I would encourage us to send the link to this message to anyone we have in our community considering joining or coming to UU Church. I thought it was wonderful in expressing how it came. I mean, I related a lot to your stories, and I think could be very helpful and informative to people who may be considering our church.
Thank you.
And let me just add, Tech shared with me that in a couple of days, this sermon will be available on YouTube.
Carrie, you don't have to watch it.
I was just thinking I'd put it on Facebook.
We do happen to have one new person who is in search of religion, and I got separated from him in coming in this morning, and so all I can do is say, I hope that he found it worthwhile this morning. I certainly did.
Thank you.
Last Wednesday, about 1 o'clock in the morning, I woke up to discover that the rug had been pulled out from underneath us, and I spent the next 2 hours rolling around with every drastic scenario my imagination could come up with. And about 2 hours later, I realized that I had to get some sleep. And so I said to myself, you're a member of the Unitarian Universalist of the Chester River. And it gave me comfort.
Good.
I'm Sally. I'm kind of new to Chestertown. I discovered Unitarian Universalism when I went to a meeting at the Annapolis Church. I lived in Annapolis at the time. I don't remember what the meeting was for. It was nothing about the church. But there inside the front door were the 7 principles on the wall. And I realized that I could be the same person on Sunday as I was the rest of the week if I came here. And that was really what sparked it for me. And what you mentioned in your sermon sparked that memory.
Thank you.
I think there are probably almost as many conversion stories as there are people here.
I just want to give you a personal account of how many different possible reasons there are that explain why you connect with Unitarian Universalism. Over 30 years ago, my young family had decided to visit churches of different denominations every week until we found one that we felt comfortable with raising our children. And it happened that the first church that we went to was our local Unitarian church. And we sat down, my partner and I, and a man got up and sang, "What kind of fool am I?" And I thought, we're home.
Well, thank you all for sharing, and thank you, Dave, for a wonderful service.
Thank you.
And if you have closing words, we can then move on to the chalice extinguishing.
May the striving for wisdom bless us. May the assurance of beauty inspire us. May the power of love direct us and sustain us. And may the peace of this community preserve our going out and our coming in from this time forth until we meet again. Amen.
And now with the words in your order of service, we'll extinguish the chalice. We extinguish
This flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again.
Thank you again, Michael. And before we leave, let me read this very important logistics announcement from the Social Justice Committee. Today's special life-saving training event setup will take place here in the sanctuary immediately following the service. If you have signed up for that training, please move to the library for your complimentary lunch, while others work to rearrange this room quickly. Coffee hour, folks, please make room for the use of the front door entrance as equipment is brought in, and everyone's cooperation is appreciated. So have a lovely day.